Welcome to Talking New York Real Estate with Vince Rocco. Our show is all about the exciting world of real estate and in particular, how it relates to the luxury New York marketplace. But if you are not planning a real estate transaction in New York, we still have plenty of information you can use no matter where you are. Now, here's our show. Good morning, everyone. New York City real estate demands a unique blend of expertise, adaptability, and finesse, making comprehensive training, sharp consulting acumen, and advanced negotiation skills essential for anyone's success. Beginning with original training at New York University, professionals gain a solid foundation in real estate principles, finance, law, and urban development. This academic grounding is complemented by hands-on experience that sharpens consulting skills, enabling agents to confidently navigate the city's complex and fast-moving market. In a landscape defined by high-stakes deals and diverse clientele, strong negotiation skills and coaching to enhance abilities are indispensable, empowering agents to advocate effectively, close competitive transactions, and build enduring client relationships. And at the table with me today are Ari Harkov from Brown Harris Stevens, Eric Gislason from Brown Harris Stevens, and Mark Norman returning. He is the Associate Dean from Schack Institute of Real Estate at NYU, and they join me now to discuss. But first, let me welcome my listeners and viewers from across the United States and all around the globe. I am Vince Rocco, and this is Talking New York Real Estate. So let's go behind the headlines and inside real estate, the state of our industry.
Hi, it's Stephen Bailey from Roadway Moving and Storage. Listening to Vince Rocco, you know the right partner makes all the difference. At Roadway, we deliver an experience your clients will love. For specialized services and white glove care, choose Roadway. Want to learn more? Email me at stephen@roadwaymoving.com or visit roadwaymoving.com.
Okay, good morning, everybody. We are back. So I know I said a lot, but this is really going to be an exciting show, and let me tell you why. We are talking about education, real estate education. There are lots of people in this town, or lots of people around the country who want to work in real estate, but don't really understand the keys to success. And we have experts here at the table who are going to talk to you about coaching, about mentoring, about negotiation. We're going to talk about programs at NYU to get yourself licensed and to get yourself prepared to get out there. These are people who have been in the field for many years and who are expert in the field. I sometimes think, being a real estate agent for 23 years and teaching it for 7 or 8 years, I know everything. I clearly don't. And I'm excited to have everybody here at the table to ask some questions. So, Mark, I want to start with you. Schack Institute of Real Estate at NYU School of Professional Studies. It's a premier institution. We all know that. And when it comes to real estate, I got my first real estate license at NYU. I want you to tell us a little bit about some of the programs that are available at NYU and at Schack, where folks who are coming into the profession brand new can get the best available, opportunities for mentorship, for good teaching, and for good experience. Because when you come out into the field, and we all know this, right? You come out into the field just like when you go to college. I'm expert in accounting. I'm expert in business. But you don't know anything. It's feet on the street. When you get your first job, on-the-job training is where you learn everything, correct? So give us a little bit about NYU, what the benefits are of someone brand new, regardless of age or past career, what the advantages to getting schooling at NYU and the programs that are available.
Yeah, first and foremost, it's in New York, and there's no better place to learn real estate than that.
Correct.
Just a little bit of history. So in 1967, Larry Silverstein founded...
There's a name.
Yeah, he founded the Schack Institute, and with the philosophy that we need to train the next leaders in real estate. So still at 94, he's my chair emeritus at Schack. Wow. He's still involved.
That's amazing.
And it started as continuing ed back in the 60s. In the early 90s, we started with degree programs, so a master's degree. Early 2000s, a bachelor's. Now we have 400 about in the bachelor's of real estate, about 550 in the master's of real estate. So we're the biggest program, we're the oldest program. But we also have about 1,500 people in exec and continuing ed. So where you got your start. So we try to think about every level of people coming into the industry. So it could be, that 16-year-old that knows they want to do it and goes right into the bachelor's program, or it could be that person pivoting.
You know, it's interesting because people say to me all the time, when I first got into real estate 23 years ago, okay, so I'm dating myself, but 23 years ago, you know, people said to me, you know, okay, that's great. You're making a career change. I had spent, you know, 20 years in technology sales at IBM and other companies like it. Today, I'm noticing, you know, because the school I teach in, right next door is all the brand new students for brand new licensing, and they're all young. Some of them hadn't gone to college, some of them just got out of college. And what I'm always fascinated by, and maybe Mark, you can help me here, but many people are approaching, you know, the industry of real estate as a first-time career, not doing anything else, not having that worldly kind of, you know, experience. They're going out from college, they're going into real estate licensing, and then out in the field and working. Do you see more students like that, or more students coming in from past careers?
I mean, I think it's a mix. I mean, I guess it goes without saying, it's not rocket science. So I think it's always around us, right? You walk into a building, you look at a city, right? So I think people start getting curious about how that works and how it's funded and how it's sold or leased. And so I think you're bringing people into the industry that already have a curiosity. And I think it is a place where you can start and build your way up. You don't need that, you know, 2 master's degrees before you know, get here. It's like you can start right out of undergrad. You can start, you know, if you want to pivot from another field. So I think it's a good place to be.
I agree. Again, if I repeated it before, I'm sorry, but I took my licensing, my first license, sales license at NYU. And I remember the professionalism and the dedication of the instructors at the time were very impressive. And I had been in corporate America for, you know, a long time. But I thought, okay, so I'm embarking upon a career that is going to make sense for me, something that I want to do, and I got a lot out of the program. Ari, let me ask you, because you are the master here in real estate sales, you know, as long as I know you, which is probably almost 20 years.
Yeah, we're getting close.
One of the things you say, though, is one of the greatest joys in your career has been guiding and mentoring others. I'm assuming other agents and probably your clients as well.
Yep.
So let me ask you, you know, why is that? Why, you know, because as real estate agents, sometimes we can be very busy, okay? And we can spend a lot of time thinking about what we have to do, but yet you take it to the next level and trying to make sure that others are as skilled or experienced as you are. Why is that important to you?
Sure. So I started my team, a sales team in 2013. And so I've been, I guess, mentoring others for, you know, kind of formally, informally for the past, you know, decade or so. And I started my coaching practice about 2 years ago. And the idea was to kind of take what I'd been doing informally within the team and bring it to outside folks who, you know, maybe are not members of the team, but are looking for coaching from a more experienced agent. I enjoy helping others. I think it's something that we all get from education. You know, you teach, you learn as a teacher. I think that also we all want to raise the bar in our industry from an integrity perspective, from a skills perspective. You know, like Mark said, it's not rocket science, and it certainly isn't. On the same hand, there's a degree of skill set, nuance, expertise that I think we can bring to the table as qualified professionals, and there are folks like us in our industry who obviously, you know, have that expertise, and there are folks who maybe, you know, are a little bit less polished, shall I say. And so for me, it's sort of like benefiting the industry, and I get a tremendous amount of enjoyment out of seeing other folks grow in their careers.
Well said, but question for you is, you know, we all come to the table as new agents, you know, wanting to be, whether you're brand new or you come from a different background, whatever.
Sure.
Do you kind of look at people's qualities or unique qualities or skills and you say, well, they're either going to make this work for them or are they not going to work? Because again, I teach continuing ed and I look at some experienced agents who have been doing it at least 2 years, right? Because we have to renew our license every 2 years.
Yep.
And there isn't a class that I teach that I don't say, really?
All right.
I mean, really? How long are you in the business? Come on now.
All right, so let's establish a few things. So one of the things that we always say on our team when we hire for our team is we can teach a lot of things. We can't teach aptitude and we can't teach attitude. If someone has great aptitude and they have great attitude, I can teach a lot of other skills.
Correct.
And conversely, if they have great skills but poor attitude or poor aptitude, there's not much I can do.
Correct.
I'll say that. The second thing I will also say is, you know, people talk about, you know, 80-20, 90-10. I think we're in like like a 95-5 industry. 5% of the agents do 95% of the business, and there's a reason for that. And if you look at, the Real Trends list every year, if you talk to folks in the industry, you'll see that there are a repeating list of agents that are consistently performing, and there's a reason for that.
We're going to get to that in a minute because I agree with you. I always say the 80-20 only because that's what I've always heard. But the 95-5 makes a lot of sense. And in the last few years, I would say that 5% probably is doing, more of it. But we're going to get to, how or why some agents rather, are performing better than others. But Eric, you say on your website, transformation is the catalyst that unlocks authentic power and confidence. Explain that. Because I thought that was a powerful statement.
Yeah. Well, I mean, what I mean by that is that real change doesn't come from just gaining a little bit more knowledge or completing a set of tasks every day. It really comes from understanding who you want to be as an agent, what you want to achieve as an agent, and it's rooted, in my opinion, in self-confidence and competence and in action. And I think that oftentimes we miss. I mean, we talk about the attitude, we talk about the aptitude, but where I think a lot of agents who could bridge that gap or could move into that percentage of successful agents is that they're so busy in action, they're so busy just trying to get some small win or something to show them that they're capable, instead of really focusing on self-efficacy, focusing on self-confidence, and understanding how powerful that is to every other action they take in their business. And that's that transformation.
I think it's all that, but how do you get people to actually tap into what their mindset is, running around in a crazy world that we run around in sometimes in real estate? You never know what your day is going to bring. How do you get people to kind of calm down, sit down, focus, and understand where they are or where they need to be based on what you just said? Because it is a very powerful revelation when they get there.
Yeah. I think the fact that we're having this conversation speaks to what they need to do. On one level, you have a lot of people who they come out of pre-licensing, they come out of that initial licensing, they get their license. There's not a whole lot of training or coaching that happens within their firm. Because sales directors, as talented as they are, they have this knowledge. They don't have the time to impart this knowledge or to give it that wisdom that they have. And so I think that the training and the coaching aspect of firms individually can be lacking. And so when you can find educational opportunities, coaching opportunities that allow you, it's going to be an investment, but something that will allow you to become better at what you do, to really focus, to have systems in place, to find what first of all, what success means to you. What do you want? Rather than looking around and trying to imitate the next person and say, well, they are doing this, this is what I need to do, to figure out what fits your needs, what fits what you want out of real estate, and what success means to you. And when you take opportunities to get coaching, when you take opportunities to have educational opportunities, you get a lot more focused and a lot more clear on that.
Mark, what are some of the critiques or criticisms that students bring back to you, after they graduate from the program? Again, feet on the street, on the job training, all that stuff. You kind of learn as you do. Does anybody ever come back to you or your instructors and say, you guys are incredibly great, I learned so much, but I'm having a problem understanding people out there, because people, we don't always understand what they're thinking about, and buyers and sellers in this town can be a little cuckoo sometimes. So do they experience hardship when they get out there in the field to now implement what they've learned back in school, just like a college student graduating in finance or in psychology or whatever? You start somewhere.
Yeah, well, I think it feels like everybody wants a job and they want me to find it for them. So that's not the easiest, but I think to Ari and Eric's point, we can teach the hard skills. We can teach financial modeling. We can teach the zoning code. We can teach all that stuff. But I find more and more it's the soft skills. And so I don't think we'll be replaced by AI, because, modeling is probably coming for a whole bunch of jobs. But to be able to negotiate, to be able to hold a conversation, to be able to read the room, to comport yourself in the way that works to get the deal done, that's harder. So that's what these guys are doing. And I find more and more we have to do that as well.
Yeah, I totally agree. Ari, let me ask you though. So you're a team leader, and you started building a team years ago to the point where they're enormously successful. You take that show on the road now, so to speak, and you counsel and you coach and you mentor other agents off of your team. We all know that in this industry, trust is everything, right? And we have to have our clients, our sellers, and our buyers trust us, because if they don't try, call it the T word when I'm teaching. If you don't have that trust, you're not going to get their buy-in.
Yes.
or their whatever.
Sure.
How do you build trust in long-term relationships with these people to understand that in order to have a relationship with your customer, because there's a lot of transactional agents out there, which don't even get me started, but in order for us to be successful over time, you've got to have that relationship build. It starts with trust. How do you explain that to people that you're coaching and mentoring? And how do you explain the importance of it?
Sure, it's a good question. So Stephen Covey wrote the book, I think, The Habits of Highly Successful People. I
Yeah,
forget what it's
7
called.
Habits.
7 Habits, thank you. And we always talk about with our coaching the x-axis and the y-axis. So on the x-axis, you have what's important, and the y-axis, you have what's urgent. A lot of agents, to your point, spend a tremendous amount of time in the important and urgent bucket. Like no one needs to tell you to spend time in that bucket. That's
Right.
clear. Like
That's
something's
clear.
coming in, you need to respond immediately. It's important and it's urgent. Then you get the agents who spend a lot of time in the not important but urgent category, and they're just burning time in their day and spending hours, and their day is so incredibly inefficient. What I want for my coaching clients, what I want for myself, what I want for my team is to have the mindset, as Eric's talking about, to spend time in the important but not urgent bucket. And to go to your question about trust, you build trust with clients by marketing yourself correctly, by putting yourself out in the world correctly, in the way that you speak, in the way that you comport yourself, in the way that you write emails, in the way that you speak to your clients, to your, to the other vendors that you work with, attorneys, brokers, what have you. The more time you can spend in the important but not urgent bucket, the more you are building a business and a lifestyle that will feed yourself, as opposed to being kind of like this hamster on the wheel, or this kind of like reactive as opposed to proactive agent. So, we talk about that a lot. And I think, to go to your question about building trust, you build trust by managing client expectations. And how do you manage client expectations? You do so before the relationship even starts. They're seeing you out in the world, they're seeing the way that you position yourself, and they already have a sense of who you are and what your business is before you even had your initial interaction.
To that point, if you don't mind,
No.
It's interestingly, Stephen Covey's son, Stephen M. R. Covey, wrote The Speed of Trust, and he talks about the two dimensions of trust: character and competence. And this is exactly what you're talking about. This idea that our character is that static. It's who we are. It's our motives. It's our intent. It's our integrity,
everything.
right?
Yeah.
And then there's the competence piece where we show results and we show our capabilities. And those two dimensions we're often showing before we even set foot in front of the client.
Let's talk a little bit, Eric, about negotiations. So, we all understand that negotiations are a big part of our daily job.
Mm-hmm.
Even if you're just talking to somebody on the phone about, you're not negotiating a deal, it's like you're always negotiating something. You're always trying to get somebody to agree to something or disagree with. Always
In
always.
life.
In life, right? So I lump that all under the umbrella of negotiations, right? So tell us a little bit about how the really successful agents navigate through that process and negotiate better than, say, not. And also, though, in fluctuating markets like we've been in the last 2 years, where some people say even if you're great at negotiation, the market is kind of stalling and not wanting to be cooperative with even the experts here in what we are trying to tell them they should do and the reasons why. So negotiation is a big umbrella, but give us a little snapshot as to how you get these guys and gals to understand the value of it. And again, in bad markets or kind of sluggish markets, what we need to do to up our game.
Yeah, well, thank you for the question. Collaborative negotiation is where I do a lot of training, and where a large amount of my expertise lies is in that idea of collaborative negotiation. So first, I'll say this. In any market, no matter and in life and in business, no matter what you're doing, you're negotiating. And collaborative negotiation is that idea that we can make the pie bigger. There is value to be gained if we understand the relative value or the needs and wants of each side of the transaction. We don't always want the same things. And so if we understand what the other side wants and we know what we want, there are exchanges that can be made to create value in that transaction. So that's kind of the overarching theme. But I will say if I would focus on one facet of negotiation that I think it transcends any market, transcends any neighborhood, any price point, any experience level. It's true advocacy for your client. And I think that's sometimes where people fall down. And they mistake advocacy for I'm on the side of my client, or I'm professional, or I'm
thank you for that.
Right.
Exactly.
And what I'm talking about is true advocacy, where it requires courage, it requires clarity, it requires the willingness to carry the load of difficult decisions. And we all know that the higher the stakes, the bigger the deal, the bolder the ask, that comes with greater pressure. And we as agents, and that's understandable. We all understand that especially when we're advocating for someone else, that there's a pressure when it comes with those big moments in a deal. And what happens oftentimes, consciously or subconsciously, is agents, they internalize that pressure. And when they internalize that pressure, they start to try to round the edges or smooth the edges. They try to protect their own interest or their client's interest by trying to navigate away from potential rejection, or they avoid that feeling of potential loss altogether. And that creates a much different risk, a much greater risk, and that is leaving value on the table, missing the zone of possible agreement, and misunderstanding the motivation and the flexibility of the other side altogether. So when you're not truly advocating for your client, it's not that you're just missing opportunities as a negotiator. You could be, because you're unwilling to make those bold asks, because you're unwilling to advocate without flinching or asking for things without fear. That's when you get to what the true value of the negotiation is. That's when you uncover, like Chris Voss calls them, the black swans, the things we don't know. That I think is probably
leaving value on the table is very important. But we've got to take a quick break. We will be right back. Everybody here is coming right back. As Talking New York Real Estate is just getting underway on this very busy Tuesday morning. Don't go anywhere.
The Everset provides full-service staging and furniture rental solutions in the New York area. For more information, please visit us at staging.theeverset.com or email us at staging@theeverset.com to request a free proposal.
So we are back. Mark, let me ask you, we were just talking to Eric about negotiations. So, how does NYU in their programs incorporate people skill, negotiation, and the absolute urgent, requirement for us as either new agents or whatever, to understand that people are different, and we've got to learn how to navigate through all different kinds of personalities, because once they get out on the street and start their business, it's like, here I come, you got to listen to me, or you don't have to listen to me, but I'm here to add value to our transaction by trying to help you. So how do you incorporate those things into your programs?
Yeah, I mean, hopefully the faculty, even if they're teaching something, are bringing in some of those skills. But we can't always guarantee that. So it's really the extracurricular things, bringing in experts. For example, Matt Katzendorf, great real estate attorney, comes in and does negotiation for orientation, right? So before the classes start. And then some of the extracurricular
before
stuff.
the classes start, okay.
Oh, yeah. And it's interesting what he does is he comes in the room, everybody's kind of chit-chatting, he's walking around, nobody knows who the speaker is, and then he gets on stage and he's like, okay, so you told me X, and you're from Atlanta, and like you just did this. What do you know about me, right? Mm-hmm. Like he's testing them, right? So it's kind of like a little bit uncomfortable, but I think it's an intro into just how life works, right? Like how do you network? How do you form relationships? So that stuff outside of the classroom is important.
I think people skill, is imperative in any business that we work in, and you don't really learn, when you're going to college and when you go in any kind of, institution for any kind of specific career. You don't really learn people skills or how to interact with people. And there are shy people, there are people who are very forward and will talk to the wall, as my sister tells me all the time. You'll talk to anybody. I'm like, well, why not? Anybody's a customer potentially, right? Or I just like to talk to people. That's what I am. Ari, help me understand, though, how, again, running a successful team and a coaching business, how important, though, is technology in the new world? I call it the new world of real estate in the last couple of years, okay, because there have been so many changes. How is technology really helping the agent today be better than what we used to be? Or how can it, better said?
That's a good question. We were talking about before the show perception and reality, so the two are not one and the same.
No.
I'll separate technology into two different areas. So there's technology from an operational perspective, how you run your business, what you do kind of on an internal side, the way you track your deal flow, the way you interact with your team, the way that you manage your day, the way that you automate tasks. There's a lot of technology there that can help us be more productive. So I think that's one side. And then the second side is how do we use technology to market ourselves better, to put ourselves better out to the world. And there you have, social media and, a whole array of obviously options out there that didn't exist, 10 or 15 or 20 years ago.
Artificial intelligence.
Or AI taking over all of our jobs soon. I saw there were robots running a half marathon in Beijing the other day, so pretty soon they'll be running faster than me.
Exactly. Opening and closing apartment doors and cupboards and whatever.
You never know.
Yeah.
The one thing I want to say on the technology piece is I think a lot of agents put way too much emphasis on the tracking of the thing or the monitoring of the thing or the new shiny toy as opposed to the doing of the thing. Mark's saying that, basically the soft skills are kind of like the separating factor, and having been in the industry for the better part of 20 years, I can't agree more. You can't learn these things without doing, and you can't avoid the actual work of doing the work. It's like every agent asks me, what CRM should I have? I don't care. Use a pen and paper. Make the phone calls. That's what matters. The logging of it on Salesforce versus Contactually versus whatever, or Follow-Up Boss, whatever you do is kind of, I don't want to say irrelevant. It's not irrelevant, but it's not really important.
Right.
The meat of the issue is to do the thing. To go out and have lunch with that attorney who can lead to business, to, follow up with that client 3 months later and ask them how, the kitchen renovation is going, to do the thing that builds relationships, that connects people. We're in the real estate business, but we're really not. We're in the people business. And so it's about building relationships. And if you can use technology as a tool to make you better, to make you more efficient, to put yourself out there into the world, wonderful. If you're using it as a crutch to kind of avoid the uncomfortable thing that you don't really want to be doing, shame on you, and you're kind of missing the point.
Yeah. Eric, in negotiation skills, as you teach that or coach or mentor folks and getting better at negotiation, does technology play a role in that at all, or does it kind of, And again, I keep going back to AI. I don't know how that would help in negotiation, but it's certainly helping people with their writing skills, going forward.
That's true.
But what about technology in negotiations? Works, doesn't work?
Well, I think you mentioned one. There are certainly aspects of technology that can aid you in negotiation. I think one is, oftentimes I've heard people talk about writing an email and then putting it into Chat GPT and rewriting the email so it's a little bit more collaborative, a little less, takes a little bit of the sting out of it, right? And so we do a lot of written communication. I don't advise as much as we can talk face to face or over the phone, have that voice communication and negotiations.
Like I already said a minute ago, call people.
Yeah, that's ideal.
That's ideal, and that's what really works, I think.
Yeah, but we do use email and text communication. So the better we can become at that, the less we'll have those trust gaps that evolve in a negotiation. So that's one aspect. And I think another way that technology can aid us is, we say negotiation is an information game. So the more access you have to information, if you use it, to Ari's point, if you're using the technology in the right way, if you can use technology to gain more insight, more information, that's going to give you power in a negotiation. So that is definitely a way that
what about different tactics used when you're negotiating with a seller versus a buyer, or are they kind of the same? Because as you said before, an agent's on one side of the deal, the other agent's on the other side of the deal. So you got to kind of understand both agents, right?
Yeah.
Or the other agent, and the fact that it's a buyer or seller. Do the tactics in negotiation change based on who you're representing?
Yeah, well, maybe not which side you're representing. They'll change depending on what's happening in the deal. I mean, I said this once on your program. It's one of my favorite quotes, and it's Sun Tzu, who says, strategy without tactics is the slowest road to victory. Tactics without strategy is the noise before defeat. So I teach a class that's 38 different tactics. It's some collaborative, some competitive. And as a collaborative negotiator, it's not that I'm immune to or that I don't use competitive tactics. I use the tactic that is necessary at the time, but tactics are just a small burst. They're a way to change the power dynamic or create urgency or to drop an anchor or to just motivate action. And so it depends on the situation, but I'll use a competitive or a collaborative tactic with my client's permission. And some competitive tactics might involve a little bit more risk, a little, for bluffing or nibbling or some of these tactics that are competitive tactics. There's a little bit of risk that's involved. So you just have to be aware of what you're using and why, and use it judiciously and at the right time.
Talk to me a little bit about, maintaining professionalism in, what we call sometimes high stakes and very tense, negotiations between other agents, between sellers and offers and buyers and whatever. How do you coach? I'm going to ask Ari the same question. How do you coach or mentor people in negotiations on how to, just always maintain that professionalism, keep calm. I like to say, stay classy, because I think that gets you a hell of a lot further than not. How difficult is it, though, for some of your students, agent students, to understand? Or do they?
It's difficult as human beings, I think, to understand. And it boils down to one really simple concept that covers that idea of staying calm, staying classy, and that is focusing on interests, not positions. That is it's don't take any of this personally. People act in their own self-interest. That is how we operate as human beings.
That's how we are, yeah.
So when the other side, whether it's the agent or the client on the other side of the deal, is acting in their own interest, and that somehow creates some conflict or something you disagree with or you feel offended by, you need to release that personal feeling that somehow somebody's doing something to you, and understand that they're only advocating for their own interests. The real question is, how do you understand what they want? What is it that they want? Not how they're behaving, not the position they're taking. What do they want? And once you understand what their area of concern is and what they want, then you can, and this is your client or the other side, then you can come up with options that will help satisfy or solve that problem.
Ari, same question to you. So maintaining professionalism oftentimes, in the broker, community can be difficult, because we're all looking for success. We're all looking to, have, whether you're representing the buyer or the seller, you want that success. And, sometimes people will say at any cost, right? But that's wrong when you're really thinking about that. So how do you coach your and mentor your agent students with learning to stay classy, stay calm, and to get the job done?
So I think what Eric said made a lot of sense. So I'll take it from a different angle. I'll take it from sort of like the coach team leader angle. The way I think about it is everything that you should be doing as a broker, as a real estate professional, you should be building towards scale with your business and your life. And so if you think about it this way, if I get emotionally intertwined with every emotional nuance, with every feeling every client that I have ever has in any transaction, I'm unable to function. I'm on the emotional roller coaster all the time. If I can stay like this as my clients go like this around me, I have the ability to scale and grow. And now I can manage 10 clients, 20 clients, 50, 100. I can scale and grow my business. So there's the kind of like day-to-day, week-to-week thing. And then there's the bigger picture thing of, are you going to be in this industry in 20 years if you're having, sort of like a nervous reaction every time your client is maybe a little bit unhappy or a little bit on edge, or they lose the apartment, or they get it but they're having second thoughts or what have you. If you're looking to build a business and a career, you have to remain emotionally stable to allow for scale and growth on a day-to-day, week-to-week, month-to-month, year-over-year basis. And if you look at the agents in our industry who kind of come and go, there's a lot of that emotional roller coaster. And if you look at the agents in our industry who are doing this for decades, there's just no way they're going to bed every night, with agita over every deal. Otherwise, they wouldn't be able to sleep and they'd have much bigger, emotional, psychological issues. So that's sort of how I think about it, kind of like from a business scale perspective.
Yeah, business and career. You hit the nail on the head there, because a lot of agents, I think, sometimes come out of school, come out of college, or enter the field and think, I want to be like those $1 million listings guy running around making zillions of dollars. Well, who doesn't?
Yes.
But it takes a lot more than the television camera to make you successful, right? So you got to understand that you're building a business one brick at a time, slowly, until you get to the point where you've, in my opinion, successfully, built relationships that will be lasting long term. Talk to me a little bit about, though, the newer agent versus the experienced agent, because both of your coaching scenarios change, right? Mm-hmm. When you're talking about newer agents versus experienced agents, because the experienced people think, I know everything, and they probably don't. Mm-hmm. And the newer people are like, hey, talk to me. Just tell me what to do. How does it change? You in your approach?
I'll bridge this question with I don't think Ari ever knows this, but 10 years ago, I came from a smaller real estate firm where I was not only an agent, then I was the manager and then a director of sales. Mm-hmm. So I had a lot of experience as a sales director. I built out the sales platform for that company, and I did a lot of training and coaching at that company.
Me too.
And I came and I was lucky enough to sit across the cubicle from Ari's team. And I will tell you, one specific thing I remember is when the L train was going to shut down.
Oh my God!
Oh gosh,
and
yes.
I watched Ari get on the phone, call after call after call with clients in this calm, measured tone, to give them the real what was happening, not sugarcoating it, not making it something that it wasn't, or telling them something that it wasn't. It was beautiful. And I, as somebody who at that point had been in the business for 10 years, I think it was like a master class in that one afternoon, and that was every day. It was like that.
You're a star, mister.
Yeah,
You really are.
It really was. And
I tipped him well for that.
Yeah, exactly.
the worst thing was when they moved my desk, and I was like, "Wait a minute!" Right, like your team moved or something. You got too big for the space. But you're right. It changes. It's different for different types of agents and agents in different stages of their career. But the fundamentals don't change. And like you said, a lot of agents who have been in the business for 10 or 15 years have developed bad habits, or the business has changed around them. And so they need some of those they need to remind themselves that nobody's too good to work on the fundamentals, or to continue to grow and educate themselves, or to remind themselves that that they shouldn't take things personally. And all of this, we start to get these barnacles on us in this career. So sometimes having a little bit of that is good for a more seasoned agent.
All right, we're going to take a break. We're coming right back, and I'm going to ask Ari the same question. Don't go anywhere. This is Talking New York Real Estate on the More Network. We'll be right back.
This podcast is supported by the More Network, powered by Brown Harris Stevens. Real estate touches every aspect of our lives, from design and architecture to investing and the economy. Now there's a way to get all your real estate information in one place. The More Network. With more than 20 podcast and webcast series, the Mastery of Real Estate Network is powered by Brown Harris Stevens, one of the country's most distinguished brokerages. Discover advice from notable entrepreneurs, compelling topics, and access to top global real estate experts. Subscribe to their YouTube and Apple podcast channels by visiting GetMoreNetwork.com.
Okay, we are back. So Ari, same thing, consulting approach with newer agents versus seasoned agents. Eric really kind of nailed it there. What is your 2 cents on that?
So I think, as Eric said, the fundamentals are the same. We're not really teaching anything different. What I would say is the newer agent is sort of like drinking from the fire hydrant. There's just so much coming at them for them to absorb and to understand and to process. And the more experienced agent is maybe going back to the fundamentals a little bit, undoing maybe some bad habits, which we all have, myself included. But then there's a level of kind of nuance and refinement that comes into your career as you advance. So, a newer agent who comes to me might be working on, like, what are the basics of prospecting and marketing, and how do I manage my day, and how do I utilize my time, and, how do I deal with, client conflict, and sort of very I don't want to say basic because basic is the wrong word, but let's call it fundamental challenges we deal with as real estate professionals. And an agent who's been in the business 10 years may be saying, I have an issue with my partner that I'm trying to resolve, or I have, 2 employees I'm looking to scale to a third, but how do I deal with like team culture and how does that work out? So, the challenge is the throughput of the fundamentals of our business remains the same. But the challenge is obviously ebb and flow. It's like, if you're the top 5 tennis player in the world, you still have a coach. And if you're, a beginner and you want to learn how to hit a forehand, you still have a coach. It's not that they're doing this totally different things, but obviously the nuance and the expertise is a little bit different.
Well said. So, Mark, there are many programs in real estate at NYU. Obviously, the Bachelor of Science, the Master of Science, commercial, residential. Talk to us a little bit, though, about post-graduation and when students want to come back for the certificate programs. Mm-hmm. What are those programs and how will they benefit, or how do they benefit, the agent who might be out there in the field already for a while and wants to get more education?
Sure. I mean, I think there are maybe too many to mention here.
There are. I started writing them and I gave up.
But I think, one I'll highlight, for example, is we have a certificate in affordable housing. But we also have certificates in things like, construction related, sort of like HVAC, but also real estate finance. And I think
capital markets and
capital
stuff.
markets. Yeah. I think that's also important because the fundamentals don't change, but the market can really change. Mm-hmm. So like right now, so how do we deal with this current climate, right? How do we deal with, are we post-COVID and what does that mean? So I think that's when you go back and you sort of understand what the markets were, where the markets are going, and those certificates help. And they're also not a 2-year or a 1.5-year master's, right? You can do a certificate 4 to 6 classes. So people are just finishing the affordable housing certificate now. We started it 2 years ago. Almost everybody taking it is working in affordable housing. So I was kind of surprised.
That's very interesting.
Yeah, but I think, you can get pretty siloed, when you're working. So some of those people might be on the syndication side. Some of those people might be on the acquisition side, and they want to understand the lending or the public-private partnership side or something else. So I think, especially for brokers, you might just want to get a better sense of a certain aspect of the market, right? So like we have continuing ed classes now in like workouts or special servicing or other things that, are the reality of the office markets, here in New York and around the country, for example.
Talk to me about when new students come into the bachelor's program at Schack Institute at NYU. Again, I jokingly mentioned before, $1 million listing. Everybody wants to run around being that agent who's going to make $1 zillion sales. I want to have those open house parties like they do, and I want you to pay for it. Do people come into wide-eyed and bushy-tailed into the bachelor program thinking, this is what I want to do as a career? Or do they really understand the business of real estate? The fact that they're getting a bachelor's is not, they're not just going to the school I teach in and just getting a license. They're getting a bachelor's in real estate. Yeah. What are they thinking?
Well, I think this is something I have to try to solve for is many of the students coming into the bachelor's, that means at 16 years old, they decided that they were not just going to go to a liberal arts program, they're going to do a bachelor's of science in real estate. That means first semester, they're taking real estate finance, right? They're not waiting till their, sophomore, junior year to declare a major.
Yeah.
So a lot of them come from real estate families or have some, right? So like come from broker families, come from, families with people doing investments. So it's an amazing opportunity, but I think one of my jobs is conveying to everybody that it's important and getting that information earlier because, right, those people are going to be ahead. So we do programs with NYCHA, so NYCHA high schoolers. We take them for 6 weeks and talk to them about real estate markets, New York City high schools, because I think it's an amazing field, right?
We all agree. And essential topics, though, in either the bachelor's program or in the graduate program, specifically talking about, the urbanness of New York City, the difference between working and selling, and these guys can talk to that too, about being an agent in New York City than anywhere in the world, completely and totally different. The urban centers, but the unique the uniqueness of that and how we need to prepare for all of the different markets. As we say all the time, Brooklyn is a market, Manhattan's a market, and Queens is all the boroughs are different markets. Within each of those boroughs, block by block can be different markets. So do you have programs that teach the students in the bachelor's program or even in the graduate program on how to understand what these different markets are?
That's a little tough, right? I mean, I think that some things
because we don't always understand it.
Yeah, I mean, and I don't either. But
Right.
but sometimes that stuff has to happen on the job, right? So we can kind of do the general. We might do case studies, but I think it's really these guys that are gonna have the real day-to-day on the ground. So what we'll do is within the class we'll have case studies, we'll have site visits, we'll have guest speakers to bring that perspective.
Guest speakers, yeah.
But it's tough because New York is a very interesting, tough market, block to block, dense. So it's different than the rest of the country in a lot of ways.
Ari, when agents come to you because they want your expertise in coaching and mentoring, do they not complain, but do they mention?
They complain sometimes.
Well, they complain sometimes. Do they?
That's a different show, Vince.
Yeah, I know it is. Do they mention the fact that there are different markets, there are unique markets, and sometimes trying to understand how to maneuver through them becomes frustrating. I mean, for someone who's doing it for 23 years, I look at some of these markets sometimes and say, "Oh, I just got past the last one. Now what are we going to do?"
Yeah.
You quickly figure it out if you got experience, but there are times where it's great to talk to somebody who's got the same amount or maybe a little more experience to say, "Hey, here's what it is."
Sure.
So what are they what are they thinking?
Yeah, so I will. There's no sales pitch in this, but I will say that one of the things that got me into coaching was I looked around at the landscape for real estate coaches in our industry, and it felt very kind of middle America based. And it felt like it was run by a lot of folks who are
So true.
intelligent, well-meaning, but either don't currently nor have ever practiced what we do.
Everybody lumps real estate into real estate. Well, not New York real estate.
Right. So like you sign up for, and I don't mean this in like any sort of diminishing way, but you sign up for a Tom Ferry, you get some coach in Arizona or something, and he or she is very well-meaning and educated and what have you, but they're going to get you 60% of the way there, 70, 80% of the way there. But if you want to operate in a luxury urban market like New York City, or you want to operate in a Miami, or you're operating in even like a Fairfield, Connecticut, or LA, or something like that, it's a different clientele. There's a different way that we do things, not holistically. Fundamentally, it's the same. Maybe the first 70, 80% is the same, but the last 20, 30% is different. And so part of what I try to impart on the clients that I work with is how do we navigate real estate, but how do we navigate New York City real estate? Or, I work with a team in Connecticut. How do we navigate luxury real estate?
Your
Which is
guy was
going to
on
be
here a little while
Yeah,
ago.
I know he was on here. Which is going to be a little bit different. And so I think it's understanding those local nuances. It's like a client asked us the other day, do you guys do the Hamptons? And my response was, no, we don't do the Hamptons. We're happy to refer you out to someone. I have enough trouble just wrapping my arms around New York City or Manhattan and Brooklyn. I'm not going to claim to be an expert at Amagansett.
100%.
Sure, do I understand the nuances of how to negotiate a housing purchase or sale? Of course I do. I've been doing this a few years. I hope I do. But I'm not going to tell you that I know block by block and being south of the highway and this and that and what the zoning is there and what you can do and how does the coastal commission look at this. Like, I'm not going to bring that expertise to the table, and I'd be doing you a disservice if I claim to. So I think part of it is understanding that New York City is this incredible market where you can do more business in a very small geographic area than probably any other place in the country, if not the world. You don't need to spread yourself so thin to try to be kind of a jack of all trades and a master of none.
Yeah, when I worked at IBM many moons ago, and I trained in their sales program, which at the time was, probably the best sales training that you can ever get in any corporation.
Yeah, IBM's the gold standard.
Anywhere. It was the gold standard.
Yeah.
And we used to say, if you can graduate, and it was a one-year program, you can graduate, and we did no other work. We got paid, of course, but no other work but train for a whole year between Atlanta and Dallas. It was a lot. But if you can graduate that program, you got that gold star and said, you can go and sell anywhere. And, I used to think that as a young 20-something-year-old real estate agent, I'm hot shit. I can go sell to any corporation. I can talk to CFOs and CEOs and COOs, because that's who our client base was. But when you get into real estate, and I always say it's the greatest when I'm teaching, it's the greatest people business ever, I thought I was really in a people business in the technology sales days, and I always did very well, always made 100% of my quota, whatever. But not until I got into real estate did I understand this is hard.
Yeah.
This is difficult because people are people. And I'm not talking to the CEO who's spending corporate money or the COO and the CFO who's a penny pincher. I'm talking to people and asking them to spend their own millions of dollars or their own hundreds of thousands of dollars. And that ain't easy.
Yeah.
Okay? Yeah. At all. So, in your negotiation, practice and your mentoring and coaching practice, how do you get that point across? And we talked a little bit about it before, that people here are really very, very, very different than people anywhere else in our country, right? We're dealing with them personally, buying real estate, how we transact deals here in New York City are completely different than anywhere else in the world. You buy a house in the suburbs, you get a mortgage, you get an inspection, you close.
Right.
Right?
Yeah.
Not here.
Not here.
Months.
Yeah.
How do you
It's so easy
teach?
to do real estate here.
No,
We don't have any
it's
co-op
a
words or anything. It's simple.
But yet I wouldn't do anything else.
Yeah.
So how do you mentor your students to understand this is different and you got to approach it differently? Because if you don't, you're not going to be successful. As I read at the top of the show, success is almost completely necessary if you want to stay in this industry.
Yeah. Well, so what I tell my coachees, the people that I coach, is, first of all, I love to tell them that you don't have to know everything. Sometimes it's refreshing for people to understand that it's okay to not know something. And your client oftentimes is not expecting you to know everything. They're expecting you to have the ability and the resources to get the information that they need and give them an honest answer. And so, sometimes it's about releasing that need to feel that you have to fake it all the time or that you have to know the answer to everything. So that's part of it. And then the other part of it is being able to be resourceful, being able to access information, being able to understand the client that you're speaking to. As you said, this is in New York City, I think more than anywhere else, because we're dealing with different cultures and a vast variety of demographics, of socioeconomic status, of all of those things, we have different decision makers. And understanding the person that we are dealing with, what type of person they are, what the behaviors are, the communication style, and being able to change the way that we communicate to meet the needs of the person that we're communicating with is incredibly important. And I think it's here more than anywhere else that's true. So whether you're dealing with somebody, like if I categorize them as an assertive driver or an analytic thinker or a collaborative feeler or an expressive humanist, kind of on the DISC profile on some degree. But if you understand who you're dealing with and what some of the behaviors and communication styles of that different decision maker are, you're going to be far more effective with communicating information in a way that they want to be communicated with, and that's going to get you to that place of trust that we talk about, that you talk about, big T, right?
The T word.
That's going to get us to that point where then once you have that, now so many doors open to your relationship, to moving forward, to figuring out the right solution if you trust them and they trust you.
Ari Harkov, so as I said before, you enjoy mentoring, coaching. You are very successful. Your team is very successful. You've been in the business for a while. You are the go-to guy when it comes to success. Give us a commercial on your success. And number one, no, and how it relates to coaching and mentoring, and how people out there can be in touch with you to get those services.
Sure. I don't think anything that Vince just said is true, but thank you for that. No, it was very kind. So the way that I think about it is sort of what I said earlier, which is, if you're looking for coaching that is based on New York City urban luxury markets, and if you're looking to coach with someone who has the experience of actively working in the business and has worked in the business and has navigated the issues that you've dealt with, that's kind of where I find my niche. I don't have a big coaching practice. I don't hand it off to, 15 other people. For me, it's sort of like, if you want the time with me, you're basically paying for my time. The one thing that I will say, and Eric and I were talking about this a little bit before the show, is, and we mentioned this in the concept of business and emotion, we are running small businesses as brokers. Whether you're an individual, whether you have a partnership, whether you have a team, whether you have a law firm, whatever it is, doesn't matter. You're running a business. I find constantly that I have conversations with agents who are interested in coaching with me, and then when I tell them that this is the cost and the service, they all fall off. They don't want to invest money in their business. So whether you're going to coach with Eric or me, or you're going to take a program at NYU, or you're going to go to Columbia Masters, or you're going to do something, it doesn't matter where it is. You need to invest in your business if you want it to be a business. So you kept using the word success, which is very generous. I'm not going to claim any accuracy on that. But what I will say is the consistency of investing in my business as a business and treating it as such, the way that I hire my employees, the way that I structure my team, the way that I manage my day, the way that I prospect, the way that we market, the way that I interface with clients, I'm always thinking 2 or 3 steps ahead in running this as a business, not in this sort of like transactional, how do I get a commission sort of way. And it's not to pay lip service or some sort of nonsense. It's really true. And Eric probably heard me do this in the office, and I'm sure it's true for you as well. I can't even count the number of times I've told clients over the years not to do something that I thought was not the right fit for them. And it didn't serve my short-term financial interests, but that was a client for life after that interaction.
But that's absolutely correct. And you are anything but a transactional agent. Mark, so Schack Institute of Real Estate at NYU, one of the premier, if not the premier real estate institutes in our town. Give us a commercial on why, if you are interested in pursuing a career in real estate, why they should come to Schack and NYU.
I mean, I think part of it's flexibility. So, if you're pivoting, we're the place, right? With the continuing and exec ed. If you're exploring the industry, if you're going to college, real estate just gives you a leg up, right? Even if you don't ultimately go into the field, right? Like these guys are saying, you're learning negotiation, you're learning how to run a business, you're learning how a city works. And so I think that's really the plug for, coming to us.
I think, again, as a people town that we live in, right? You can't avoid people when you live in New York City, and this industry being very people intense. If you do participate in the real estate industry, you're a leg up on most other people who live and work in New York City. Eric has a new podcast on our More Network here. I'm going to ask him to tell us what it's about, tell us how it came about, and where we can find it.
So the podcast is called Shearline, and it's about negotiation. It's negotiation mastery, but it's not a teaching podcast. What we do is we take one small facet of negotiation, like our pilot podcast was talking about conflict avoidance through the idea of Minnesota Nice. And if you've ever spent any time in Minnesota, you know what Minnesota Nice is.
I did.
Yeah, passive aggressive behavior, conflict avoidance, and how that affects us in a negotiation. And so I sit down with a guest who is an expert on the topic that we discuss, and we have a fun conversation to give a little bit of insight about negotiation and negotiation mastery. And the idea of Shearline has a dual meaning. One, the reason I love the title is it's the imaginary line when you insert the right key into a lock that allows the pins to all match up and create that open line that allows you to open the lock. And it's also where 2 weather systems collide and cause energy and chaos and storms. So that is the 2 sides of negotiation that I think are really fascinating.
And how frequently can we watch this show, listen to the show on the network?
It's going to be every other week. And so our first episode just dropped last Friday, I believe. And the next one will be dropping on May 8th, actually. So we'll be taping a little bit later and dropping on May 8th. So there'll be a little bit of a gap between first and second episode. So keep an eye on that. And if I could plug Archway Partners, my coaching company as well.
Of course, absolutely.
I started my coaching company a few years ago as well. And I felt that there was a desperate need, as Ari mentioned, for coaching especially in New York City, but a different type of real estate coaching. I have my ACC accreditation from the International Coaching Federation. I'm a certified Clifton Strengths coach. And I believe very strongly in that coach approach and meeting clients where they are and understanding that everybody comes with different circumstances, beliefs, and values. So that individualization of my coaching program is very important to me. And I build a lot of courses around negotiation, around value proposition. So there's a lot to offer.
Well, congratulations on that. Mazel tov, as they say here in New York on the podcast. I told you it was going to be a great show. We are coming right back. One more segment with my thoughts of the week. Don't go anywhere.
Hi, it's Stephen Bailey from Roadway Moving and Storage. Listening to Vince Rocco, you know the right partner makes all the difference. At Roadway, we deliver an experience your clients will love. For specialized services and white glove care, choose Roadway. Want to learn more? Email me at steven@roadwaymoving.com or visit roadwaymoving.com.
Okay, everybody, we are back with my thoughts for the week. So, becoming an expert in New York City real estate is not just worthwhile, it's often essential for long-term success in this highly competitive and complex market. With its dense mix of property types, distinct neighborhood identities, ever-evolving regulations, and intense buyer and investor demand, New York City offers both immense opportunity and unique challenges. Expertise in the local markets allows agents and professionals to provide strategic guidance, anticipate trends, and deliver exceptional value to those clients. Whether negotiating co-op board approvals or luxury investment portfolios, a deep understanding of the city's real estate landscape builds credibility. It strengthens negotiation power and opens doors to high-level clientele and lucrative deals. In short, expertise in New York City real estate isn't just a competitive edge, it's a foundation for success. And that's our broadcast for today. Thanks to my guests for being here on set with me. You can follow me on Facebook, on Threads, Instagram, LinkedIn, Blue Sky, TikTok, and now Substack at Vince Rocco. And Vince Rocco says the world feels loud right now. The news, the markets, the uncertainty, it's all moving too fast. Stay calm, stay classy. And from all of us here at Talking New York Real Estate and the More Network, to all of you all around the globe, thanks for spending a part of your day with us. I am grateful, and I will see you next time. Goodbye, everybody.